Good day everyone, GarageKing here, and on today's special episode, I have a second generation Nissan Rogue, so 2014 to 2020. And we are going to do the front brakes on this vehicle. So first things first, we always want to pop the hood, and we want to lift up the vehicle. Now, if you don't have a set of quick jacks, I don't make any commission or anything like that. Just I'm saying wherever you can find them the cheapest, I highly recommend them. I use them all the time and just love them. So anyway, let's take off this wheel, take a look. Now, at first glance, everything looks okay. All right, so we're gonna take the caliper off. It's just two 14mm bolts, but my friend that owns this vehicle, he was telling me that his pedal is just vibrating. So he's probably got imprinting, the rotor is just out around, I guess, and something is probably sticking, and that's the problem. So we're gonna take it all apart and find out what is the cause of this, and you're going to see it's going to be lack of maintenance. Because lack of maintenance can cause serious issues.
And then all of a sudden, there's a truck tire in the middle of the road, and you hit the brakes. Whoa, that was close.
So you want to have your vehicle properly maintained. Now the pads here actually aren't too bad, but you know, my friend just said just replace them anyway because he just didn't want to have any problems. Now he could have got away with using them because there is enough, but you know what? Hey, customer wants it. I tell him, you know, what it really needs, and you know, they make the final call. That's just how it works. So anyway, we're going to be replacing the caliper, but I want to show you, just in case you're not replacing the caliper, how it's done. So I use a special tool, and all it does is it pushes the piston back in. You can see there I'm cranking it, and I'm actually pushing the piston back in. This is the easiest way to do it. The tool actually doesn't even cost that much. I'll put a link in the description below. I just find it's really, really handy to do it this way. There we go. Our piston is back, and if we look here, we can see the ring. The rubber ring here, nothing is actually sticking out, so it's good. Sometimes they sort of poke out and you got to poke them back in, but that one's good. No worries there. No worries there, guys. You can see here, there's this pin, and it moves fine. And then there's this pin. So whoever did the brakes last did not take these apart and clean them. You can see actually if I pull this back, it is just full of rust. Now I did try everything. I tried with my wrenches and everything, and no go. Now I even tried with a 19mm wrench. I had a big wrench I put on it and I was reefing down on it and it still wouldn't go. Now what happens is I can actually get it out. I can use a torch, I can heat it, you know, get it hot enough to pull the pin out. But you know what, it's not worth it. It's gonna be so pitted up and everything that I find that from experience when you do that, and even when you replace the bushings and stuff like that, you only get about a year. You gotta hone them out and put new pins and everything like that in. So for us, we're just gonna order a new caliper and that should correct our problems. All right, so 19mm on the swivel, we'll take out the rear caliper bolts. And we can actually just pop the rotor off. And what we're gonna do right now, because we're getting the whole caliper, is we're just gonna undo the bolt here. And we're just gonna take this off. And this, I believe, it is I think it's a 12mm, guys, or maybe it's 14 or something. Anyway, let's see. Let's see what it is. Yeah, and that is, that's a 12. Make sure you have a drain pan underneath, because you're gonna lose a little bit of fluid. Okay, so now I'm just gonna clean up the hub a little bit. Now, I'm gonna do a little safety thing here. If you don't have this, and you don't have this, okay, so guys, watch. Protect yourself. If you don't have these, don't use a power tool. Just do it by hand and you can just clean it off. You know, you can just clean them by hand actually. It's not too bad. I use this because it's much quicker. I can zip them clean, but I always make sure I'm wearing my safety protection. So you generate a lot of fine dust. If they're not factory pads, they may even still have asbestos. It wasn't banned that long ago. So there were still cars running around with some asbestos. So protect your lungs, wear a mask. Now we're just going to put some anti-seize here, and if you're wondering why I'm talking funny, I still have my mask on because this stuff is still probably floating around in the air, so I'm not going to take my mask off yet. And this one here has no set screw, so our rotor is just going to go on anyway. It doesn't really matter. And there we go. We got a rotor on. Okay, so we have our new caliper, and I want to take a few moments just to talk about how to install the springs, because I wanted to show you. Make sure when you put them together, the spring part here, it goes up. Now, I don't know, hopefully this shows well on camera. I'm not too sure. Hopefully it's going to show there. There you go. You can see the spring is up, and that's to grab the pad. So when you put these in, the spring has to be up because these things are not the same. There's sort of an inner and an outer one. These little tabs right here, these tiny little tabs, they have to face up when you're putting them in. So grab one, take a look and see if it's gonna go in when you're installing it, if it's gonna face up. If it's facing up, then you're good to go. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna pop them in here, but before we pop them in here, actually it'll go like this. Before we pop them in, I wanna put a little bit of anti-seize in there just to protect from rust. So we're gonna give them a little paint job here. A little bit of anti-seize. And what I'm going to do is just put a little dab just in there, not much, tiny little dab. And what I'm looking for in here is I'm looking for these things. This is what I'm looking for. You're going to want to put this on the inboard pad, and what this is it's an indicator. When your pads get really low, they'll rub the rotors and they'll start to make a noise. Bring our caliper back. And you can choose whichever one's gonna go on the inboard side. I'm gonna choose this one, I suppose. There we go. There. Just like that. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put a little bit of this on. Stop squeal. So you just put a little bit. That's actually probably, well, that's okay. I'll just spread it out. I didn't realize so much would come out. That's fine. Well, let's get it in shot here on the camera. I'm getting sloppy here. There's this one. Now the inboard one, we just want to do a nice little circle right where we think it's going to hit the piston. There we go. Now we are going to put our caliper bracket on here, just like so. Now sometimes these pads can pop out. And in my case, they did. They were just a little bit too wiggly. So you can see here, I'll give the rotor a little jiggle in a second, and there you go. So for me, it was just easier to take the pads out. But if you have a nut, you can just use that to hold the rotor steady while you're doing them, and that will work. So we got our pads in. Now we have our new caliper, or rebuilt caliper. So what we're gonna do, obviously if I push this in, it's not gonna fit. So we're just gonna squeeze these tight. There we go, just so we can get our caliper over, just like so. You can see here, this is a good one. There's a flat spot here, so you just wanna make sure it's flat onto where the caliper is, and you'll know. So time to put the bolts in, and you know what? I always tighten them up by hand. This way I have a good feel. I never wanna put them in with the impact, because obviously don't wanna break them. There you can see we have our two new washers. So now we're just gonna tighten them up with our wrench, our 12mm wrench. Now, there you go. There is our brakes all done. All right, so now we got to bleed the brakes. So we just take off a little rubber cap here. For this Nissan here, it's an 8mm. So I got my fancy little bleeder wrench on. Gonna crack it free, just like so. There you can see it's loose. If you want, you can even just take it right out. It doesn't really matter. Once we see fluid coming down, what we're gonna do for anyone that changes calipers, this is what I always do. This is what I was taught. Once you see the fluid coming down, you put the bleeder back in, you snug it up, then you get someone to give you a hand. There you go. You can see the fluids coming out. So now we won't have that much in the way of bubbles. So we shouldn't really have too many bubbles. Let's see if we get some out. Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, so now we'll put this back in. Give it a snug up. Not much. These really don't get tightened much. That's it. And now what we can do is I'm gonna get someone to step on the pedal to push all the fluid out. So now I've loosened the bleeder, and I'll tell my assistant to slowly push the pedal down and hold it down. So what I'm doing now is I'm just pushing out any excess fluid. There you can see some of it coming out right now. Now I'm going to tighten it up, ask them to take their foot off the pedal, and now they can actually pump up the brakes to get a pedal. So it should feel like a normal brake pedal now. But there could still be a little bit of air left. So what we're going to do is a couple quick cracks of the bleeder, and I'll show you how. Okay, now push it down as hard as you can. Okay. Okay, take your foot off. Okay. Now push it down as hard as you can. All right. Take your foot off. Okay. Now push it down as hard as you can. Okay, take your foot off. And now just pump it up till you get a pedal, and then we're gonna check for leaks. So just use a little bit of brake clean to wash away any excess brake fluid that might be left. Okay, now push the pedal down as hard as you can and hold. So one of the most important parts that people actually skip over is just making sure you have no leaks. So with some force on the pedal, just give it a good look over and make sure you have no leaks. Now the one thing I thought about is the actual caliper. If you're not replacing and getting a new one, you might want to do the pins, and this is how. So do one at a time, because most likely they are different. So all you're gonna do is, you can see here, I can twist them. You're gonna pinch the rubber here, Okay, so you're gonna hold the rubber so the rubber doesn't move, and then you're gonna pull the rubber back while twisting, and then just pull the pin out while you're twisting, just like so. And you can see these ones are starting to dry up, but they're not bad. They're not bad, so we're gonna wipe them clean. Now you can see this pin here, it's all steel. There is no rubber. So what I'm gonna do is just take it to the wire wheel. I'm just gonna give it a little buff job, just clean it up just a wee bit. Brake caliper pin is nice and clean. So what I got is my brake caliper lubricant. Just gonna undo it like so. You can see there's a bunch on there. I'm gonna take a little bit here. Well, maybe not that much, about that much. Just gonna put it in just like so. Get it right to the back. Because once this pin hits the O-ring going in, what's gonna happen is the O-ring is gonna wipe off most of this stuff and keep it at the front, and you're not gonna have any lubrication at the back of the caliper. So as long as you get those flat spots and you make sure they're full, then that's what'll carry the remainder of the lubricant to the rear of the caliper. There we go. Now what we'll have to do is just give it a good push. There we go. We got our air bubble out. And that one is done. Now, if you remember, that one had no rubber, so I bet you any money this one's gonna have a piece of rubber on it somewhere. We'll see, could be wrong. Nope, there you go. There's a rubber. So the pins are different, so make sure you don't interchange them. There we go. And that's done. So if you're not putting in a rebuilt caliper, that is how you lube the pins, and it's very important to do so because, as you saw earlier, if you don't, well, you might be replacing your caliper because it could seize up. All right, so what did I use? Well, I used a 21 mil socket. That was for the tires, 19 mil swivel. Back of the calipers, the big bolts, 14 mil swivel. That was the little bolts for the calipers. 12 mil wrench, that's for the brake hose for the back of the caliper. 19 mil, don't even worry about that. That was just because that one was seized and I was just using that wrench because it fit to turn something or to turn the pin. I used a small flathead screwdriver just to put the lube in. It's kind of important. I used a bleeder wrench if you hung around to see me bleed the brakes. 14 mil for the back of the caliper bolts. 21 mil socket on a torque stick. Prevents over tightening by this guy. And then I use this for some cleaning. Probably the most important tool, caliper spreader. Love this thing. And then my 2 impact guns, but you don't need impact guns. You can do it all by hand with hand tools, but in a nutshell, that's what it took. Hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Thanks everyone. Any questions, leave them below.